So here we are with the original From the Waste, a very interesting version of it to say the least. This is a version of the game that's even older than the build currently available on itch, which is interesting. The build on itch only contains one level, which is not in this version. This version was uploaded to GameJolt, and the current version on GameJolt is not this version. The current version on GameJolt is a single screen that doesn't do anything, but whatever. This is the tutorial because the original Waste had a tutorial and all the enemies died like that instead of having actual death animations. Those didn't come until close, very close, like a few weeks, I think, before that itch.io build came out. This build, I think, was made like 8 months before that one. Not 8 months before that one came out, mind you, but 8 months before that build was made. That build was probably uploaded 4 months after it was made. Something like that. As you can see, yeah, all this is still consistent with how the build on itch works, except you can't look up now. The walk animation's different in the itch version. A lot of the animations are different in the itch version overall. Enemies don't have pathfinding in this version, only the raiders do. And it's way buggier than it is in Hollow Waste, but whatever. As you can see, that move works, and mechanical enemies just don't have death animations altogether. Now, that enemy type was called the Scout, if anyone's curious, and it is not present in any other version of the game. These guys you'll recognize from Hollow Waste and Greeds in the Waste. They are the Growth. Oh yeah, by the way, those blue guys up there were called the Hideous. They are not present in either of the modern games, but they still exist in the test build. I mean, not test build, the indefinite hiatus build on itch. As you can see, you can't look up. Like I already said, when you look up, you don't face backward like you do in the test build. That's a thing I just straight up removed from Hollow Waste and Get W, because those projects were crunch time projects I was making in a short period of time, and a lot of the little details got cut out. But whatever. This game has some very messy code. Like, I had to go back and get things in order just so this would be functional for recording, but the big guy who just shot projectiles was called a rat shooter. Those guys are present in the build on itch, and yeah, they exist. They're based on Mancubuses from Doom. That's the reference. And it's such a blatant reference, it's part of the reason why I don't use them in the modern games. I really like them, so I might bring them back at some point, but it just feels weird. But yeah, by the way, that weird spider thing I killed was called the Hunt. I literally cannot remember if it's in the indefinite hiatus build on itch, and it's so unimportant that that's probably why I can't remember if it's in or not. It's the exact same as a Growth, except it moves faster and has less health. Now if we go up here, we'll fight the boss in the tutorial, and yes, the tutorial had its own boss, because this version of From the Waste was supposed to be like a real, like, multi-world, multi-level game, versus Hollow Waste and Greeds in the Waste, which are supposed to be beaten in like 15 to 20 minutes. They're just like fun projects I decided to make in a week. This was originally intended to be like a full-scale, multi-month project, and it took like a year and a half before I quit working on it. Let me actually think when I started working on it. Had to be sometime early to mid-2020, and I quit working on it sometime early to mid-2021. So yeah, a year. Anyway, this is the boss, which is pure. And that's what it does, is it just moves left to right. As you can see, my artistic skills did improve greatly from this, and are significantly better with like knights and stuff, but if you just have the super gun charge, which is a thing in this game, and not in Hollow Waste, you can just like kill him. I actually think this is a pretty okay tutorial boss. It's not particularly difficult. You can get overwhelmed very quickly though, but I feel like it works pretty well. And by the way, this game's not ordered in any way right now in its current state. No Scabite, by the way, who was the boss of the test build. In the itch.io build, the itch.io build, that level is not present in this at all, neither is the fog from it. Ignore this red guy, that's the Zoom. He just teleports to your location after a while, and you can kill him. And growth death sound effect, but whatever. The Zoom was a very unfinished enemy, and I put him there, and I forgot to remove him before uploading it. That he was just there to test, since this was the first normal stage, but whatever. Anyway, the Hideous, you can shoot them, but you can't run away from them because they move too fast. But they die in one hit from literally anything, so just use the hammer. Now, the Rad Shooter is just Vess, I guess. I did have some interesting prototype levels that didn't really get to the full release, where you'd be fighting a Rad Shooter and another enemy with a lot of health would be chasing you at the same time, so you'd have to focus on killing the enemy chasing you while avoiding fire from the Rad Shooter, and that's really the only really good thing the Rad Shooter is for, because solo, it's just really monotonous. Since this is the first standard level, though, I think you can let it slide. Level 2, which is the only other normal level. Now, these are the Raiders, and this is the build. At some point, I removed their pathfinding and then added it back in later. So, yeah, these are what the Raiders were like at this point. Basically identical to how they were in Hollow Waste, but they're stupid now. I mean, they were stupid back then, I guess, because this was back then, but whatever. Yeah. And they still have the growth death sound because they're unfinished. At some point, I removed the pathfinding because it wasn't working, and then re-added it back in. I don't even think the Raiders are present in the itch.io build. I don't remember. I don't think they are, which is weird considering they're like the most common enemy in a lot of the later stuff I've done with the Waste games. And, you know, story-wise, they're the most relevant, easily, but whatever. Because the growth are just... The growth and other things aren't affiliated with anything. This up here is the Reject. At some point I called him the Freak, but the Reject is the name that I like better. And the version in the itch.io build has completely different animations than this. The only thing that's the same is the head, but he has a death animation, completely different body sprite, and walking animation from this. And I really like the Reject's design. It's kind of a shame that he wasn't put in Hollow Waste or Greeds in the Waste, but whatever. As you can see, his head is mildly reminiscent of Usurper. That's a coincidence, but whatever. I do think they're quite different, though, in a lot of ways, but he just leaves this blood puddle, and you just kill him. I really dig how angry he looks, though. Anyway, so the next two things here, these are the last two things in the video, are the two bosses. One was going to be in stage 5, one was going to be in stage 10, right? And, yeah, so neither of these bosses are particularly interesting. I actually think Pure is the harder boss out of all three of them, but whatever. Go in. Now this boss is very buggy. As you can see, the health bar just goes down whenever it feels like it. And when you hit it, it does different amounts of damage sometimes for literally no reason, especially when you get close to hitting it. If you get really close to hitting the boss but technically don't, it does more damage because the hitboxes are screwed up. And it's kind of amazing. But whatever. This is their lament, as I call it. Basically what this first phase is this is supposed to be a big hole, and it's peeking its head out of the hole to fire at you. I actually went through the effort of changing the color of the projectiles it shoots from the Rad Shooter, which is not something you would have expected from this point in the game-making thing. I don't want to call it a career because it's not one, but whatever. You would not have expected that because of how little artistic effort was put in everything else. So that amount of itty-bitty amount of effort is hysterical. I actually think enough effort was put into the build currently on Itch. I'm kind of mildly proud of that, but it's still messy. Anyway, I'm just waiting. But yeah, this is a multi-phase boss, by the way. And phase 2 is this. It finally jumps out of the hole. And it's some kind of mantis. You want to shoot the red circle, bullets don't break, and it does a random amount of damage again. If you use the friggin' super gun, you kill it in like 2 seconds, because of course. And yeah, also the super gun is something I really want to add to an actual Waste game when I try and make a full one. I want to do that at some point. I really want to do that. I was going to do that instead of Knights, but then I decided, well, I've done 2 Waste games in a row, and Get W really melded my sanity a little bit. So yeah. But I do really like this world that I've made, and I really want to make another one. But let's move on to the final thing in the video, which is the other boss, the boss that was going to be in stage 10. This is Natto, which is short for anatomy, which is really, really clever because he's a skeleton, and skeletons are part of human anatomy. It's a terrible name, but whatever. Basically, what you want to do is you just want to shoot him, and then whenever he does the charge thing, you know, you hit him with the hammer. That's it. That's literally it. There was a voice cue for when he's like doing the charge thing, but I've cut that out from the video. The boss theme is basically the same from this to Hollow Waste and Get W. I'm not gonna make a new boss theme. I actually think that's the best part of the original Waste, but at half health he starts shooting finger things. Like, if you look, his hands are like these thin claw things, and he's just shooting collections of them out of his other hand, because if you notice, it doesn't have fingers. But yeah, he still does the charge every once in a while. This phase can be a bit unfair, because if you get really screwed over, he'll just do the charge, and the timer for his projectiles will coincide with when you hit him with your hammer. So he'll do that, where he'll just hit you with a projectile as it runs down. And these projectiles don't break on contact with your hammer, unlike the green and red ones. These ones don't. So yeah, that's what was this. There's a lot of other things that were made at some point, entire other bosses that were cut, entire level themes like the beach that existed at some point, but they're not present in this build, and I don't have the build they were present in, unfortunately. But whatever.